The fluorescent lights above flickered again. A brief stutter of white before settling into a dull hum that seemed louder than usual in the empty store. Night shifts always had this weight to them. An exhaustion that clung to my bones, made every shadow too deep, every sound too sharp. I wiped my hands on my uniform, the fabric damp from hours of stocking shelves, and let my gaze drift to the convex security mirror mounted above the counter. It was a dull, metallic dome, warped at the edges, reflecting the aisles in a fisheye curvature. Most nights it was just a mirror, but tonight I noticed someone, or at least something, standing behind me. The first glimpse was subtle, a dark figure at the edge of the mirror's distortion, leaning slightly, almost imperceptible. But then I saw the smile. It was too wide, too deliberate, curving in a way that seemed almost impossible. My stomach tightened. I spun around. The aisle behind me was empty. The store smelled faintly of antiseptic and cold soda from the fridges lining the far wall. The hum of the lights vibrated in my skull. I laughed nervously, the sound hollow, and forced my shoulders to relax. "You're seeing things," I muttered. I returned to restocking the shelves, but I couldn't stop glancing up. The mirror seemed to react to my eyes, to my focus. Every time I looked, the figure appeared in a slightly different posture, leaning closer, tilting its head. The smile never faded. I tried telling myself it was a trick of the convex glass. Distortion, fatigue, the mind playing cruel games. But then it did something that couldn't be explained by angles or reflections. It waved. Not a quick flicker of motion, but a deliberate, slow wave, as if testing my attention. Heart hammering, I turned again. Nothing. The aisles were still empty, the fridges humming, the scent of cold air and processed snacks unchanging. I took a step back. The mirror caught the movement, and the figure mimicked me perfectly, but with that same eerie, exaggerated grin. I swallowed hard. There was a rational explanation somewhere. Perhaps someone had slipped in through the side door. A prank. A reflection of someone outside the store, catching in the glass. I wiped a smear off the mirror, half expecting my reflection to blur the figure away. Didn't. Instead, it leaned closer. I could see the details now. A pale, featureless face, eyes that didn't seem quite right, yet unmistakably human in shape. The smile stretched from cheek to cheek, too wide to be natural. My reflection was there too, smaller, distorted, normal, but the other face was impossibly behind me, always just at the edge of my vision. I moved to the other side of the counter, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone lurking in the store. The mirror shifted with me, bending the aisles in unnatural angles. And there it was again. Same posture, same smile, impossibly watching. The cold air from the fridge aisle brushed my arms as I walked, a chill that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I could hear the faint rattle of a soda can falling in one of the open fridges, though when I checked, nothing had moved. I tried to focus on the mundane, scanning inventory lists, straightening snack bags, humming quietly to myself. But every time I glanced at the mirror, the figure reacted before I even moved. Leaning in, tilting its head, following my eyes, smiling wider. I backed into the aisle between the chips and candy. The store felt smaller now, walls pressing closer. My chest tightened. Every reflection caught the figure before I could see it with my own eyes. I shook my head, telling myself I was losing it. The fluorescent light flickered violently. For a second, the mirror was black. Then it returned, gleaming impossibly clear. The figure now stood closer, shoulders hunched, smile unnerving in its perfection. My own reflection stared back at me, pale and tired, heart hammering in my throat. I moved slowly to the freezer section. The hum was louder here, more oppressive, vibrating through my teeth. I leaned against the cold metal door, trying to calm down, trying to convince myself this was exhaustion, imagination, a trick of the glass. I dared another look, and this time it wasn't mimicking me. It was doing something else, something I hadn't seen before. It was waving both hands now, beckoning me forward, tilting its head, eyes locked on mine. But when I stepped closer, the reflection distorted. The aisles behind it twisted like spilled water. For a moment, I could see the floor curling up at the edges, the shelves bending impossibly. And through the warping glass, the figure's smile widened further. It was unnatural, predatory, not angry, not malicious, but anticipating, patient. I stumbled back toward the counter, stomach churning. My own reflection was behind the cash register, normal, exhausted. But the figure lingered, unnervingly close to me in the mirror, standing in spaces that should have been empty. I grabbed the phone on the counter, fumbling for the emergency line. My fingers shook, but the dial tone hummed normally, and when I glanced up at the mirror again, it was gone. Relief, shallow and temporary. I laughed softly, trying to shake it off. "It's gone," I whispered. "Just gone." I straightened the candy display, heart slowing. The hum of the lights, the cold air from the fridge, the faint antiseptic scent. Everything ordinary again. Then, a subtle, impossible detail caught my eye. The figure wasn't behind me this time. It was in the reflection of the counter glass, crouched impossibly low, staring straight at me. Its smile had widened, impossibly wide, teeth impossibly white. And for the first time, I noticed. Its eyes weren't just watching me. They were aware. They tracked me, knowing my every move. I froze, blinking, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a reflection of some soda can, some stray bag of chips. But no, there it was, smiling, patient, impossible. I forced myself to turn, to look behind me. The aisle was empty. The fridges hummed. The fluorescent light flickered. Steady now. Nothing. I turned back, and the mirror caught it, standing there, closer than ever, smiling in a way that should not exist. I wanted to look away, to leave, to step out into the quiet night. But something rooted me to the spot. A fascination I could not explain. A dread I could not escape. The mirror warped slightly, bending the aisle in on itself. The figure's head tilted, perfectly timed with mine, perfectly aware. And it smiled. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stared. And then I realized something that made my stomach knot. It wasn't just behind me. It was inside the mirror. And it was waiting. The store was quiet, quieter than usual. The kind of silence that makes the fluorescent lights feel like they're buzzing just to keep themselves awake. I had been working the late-night shift for months, but there were nights when the emptiness pressed indifferently. Tonight felt like one of them. I was straightening candy bars near the counter when the bell above the door jingled softly. A man stepped in, his coat damp from the drizzle outside. Nothing unusual. Late-night customers tended to trickle in like ghosts, but something about him made me pause. He didn't look around the store the way most people did. His eyes fixed on me, steady, calculating. "Evening," I said, forcing a smile. "Can I help you find something?" He nodded, brushing his wet hair from his forehead. "Yeah. Is the quiet corner still safe?" I blinked. The quiet corner?" I followed his gaze. It was that small section near the back of the store. A cluster of shelves tucked into a shadowed nook, just dim enough that the fluorescent lights didn't quite reach it. Usually, it was called the quiet corner half-jokingly, since it was away from the main aisles, a place people sometimes loitered when the store was empty. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Always has been. No reason it wouldn't be." He nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. There was something about the way he said it, as though he already knew it wasn't safe, as though he had seen something I hadn't. I watched him wander toward the center aisle, keeping the candy display between us. Something in the back of my mind tensed, a small voice whispering that the corner felt off. I turned to glance at it, pretending to stock gum, and immediately noticed the difference. The corner was colder than the rest of the store. Not just a subtle chill, the kind that crawls under your skin. The fluorescent light flickered above it in uneven pulses, leaving shadow and clarity to wrestle with one another. A bottle of soda had shifted on the lowest shelf, tilted slightly, though I was certain I had straightened it earlier. The silence was heavy, as if the corner were holding its breath. I shook my head, trying to rationalize. Late hours, fatigue, the hum of the refrigeration units, shadows playing tricks, nothing I hadn't experienced before. Yet my stomach twisted, and I found myself glancing back at the man. He was still at the center aisle, pretending to browse chips, but his eyes never left the corner. Minutes passed. The store's usual late-night rhythm, the low whine of the freezers, the soft click of the sliding door when it opened for a passing customer, felt suspended. Time felt uneven. I found myself cleaning a spill that hadn't happened, scanning shelves that hadn't needed it, just to keep from staring. And then I heard it. The faintest scrape, like something nudging a box along the shelf. My pulse jumped, and I spun toward the corner. Nothing. Just the dim shadows and the slightly shifted soda bottle. I told myself again, it's just fatigue. You've been staring at dull shelves for 8 hours. But my rationality didn't settle my skin crawling. The corner seemed to pull at me, like it had weight. The air near it was colder still, a draft I couldn't place. I could hear the distant hum of the fluorescent lights, but the quiet corner seemed to absorb it, leaving only a dead, hollow silence. The man walked past me toward the counter. He didn't smile. His eyes lingered on the corner for a moment, then flicked up to me. "I thought I'd check," he said softly. "It's different tonight." "Different how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He shrugged. "You'd know if you'd been back there." His tone wasn't threatening, not exactly, but it carried a weight, like he was warning me of something I wasn't supposed to see yet. I watched him pay for a bottle of water, then linger by the door, the bell jingling faintly as he left. And still the quiet corner waited. I stepped closer, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and unease. The temperature dropped noticeably as I approached. My breath fogged slightly, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood. Nothing seemed out of place at first glance. The shelves were stocked, the floor clean, but the longer I stared, the more I noticed the subtle wrongness. A packet of gum tilted at a sharper angle than gravity should allow. A magazine cover faced the wrong way. Shadows pooled where they shouldn't, yet fled when I looked directly. I touched the nearest shelf, half expecting the items to resist, to vibrate under my fingers. They didn't, but the air felt alive, as if it were watching me, waiting. I tried to shake it off and return to the counter. My hands were trembling slightly as I wiped it on a rag. But when I glanced back, the corner seemed to have shifted. Not physically, the walls hadn't moved, but the shadows were deeper, the angles sharper, the darkness more patient. I stepped back, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to leave, to lock the doors, to forget this place even existed. But I couldn't. My eyes kept drifting toward that corner, to that oppressive little space that seemed to breathe in the emptiness around it. I realized then that I was imagining movement. Or, I hoped I was. A shadow at the back shifted slightly, or perhaps it was just the fluorescent light flickering again. My reflection in the glass of a freezer window caught my eye, and for a moment it felt like the reflection wasn't quite right. Not because of distortion, but because it didn't match me. A shape lingered just at the edge of my vision, crouching, waiting. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself again, it's nothing. A trick of fatigue. A prank. The corner is empty. Safe. Yet I could feel it watching. I leaned on the counter, trying to breathe, trying to convince myself that the normal noises, the hum of freezers, the faint sound of a car passing outside, were enough to ground me. But there was a pressure there, something patient, calculating, aware. And no matter how much I told myself it was just my imagination, I knew it wasn't. The store's lights flickered one final time, long enough to plunge the corner into near darkness. I could see the faint outline of a shadow pooling at the back, as though the space itself was compressing. I froze, my hand on the counter, stomach twisting. The air was colder than it had any right to be. I couldn't bring myself to step closer. The quiet corner waited. I could feel it, like it knew I was watching, like it was aware of me in a way that no inanimate space should ever be. I turned away, pretending to tidy the candy again. But every glance I stole toward the corner made my chest tighten. The longer I looked, the more certain I became. It wasn't empty. And then I realized the man's question wasn't casual. Is the quiet corner still safe? It wasn't a question. It was a warning. I didn't know what he had seen, what had happened back there before I arrived. And I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. But I also knew this. The corner wasn't just a space. It was waiting. And it was aware.